Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Kendrick. Hello, everybody. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. Week 3 is underway, and so far it is great. I am so happy to have football back, and the one thing that I have been honestly very surprised of is how little COVID-related news we have actually had with the NFL. Now, some coaches have been fined. I do believe at the moment 4 coaches in total have been fined for not really wearing their masks, and it's Pete Carroll, Sean Payton, and John Gruden, and some other head coach was also fined for not wearing their mask, and they're getting fined heavily. The coaches individually are getting fined, I believe, $100,000, and then the teams are getting fined an extra amount. I believe I saw it was $250,000. So the NFL is making you pay if you do not wear a mask. Wear a mask. But at the same time, I do believe only one player has tested positive, or not tested positive, but only one player so far has actually missed a game due to COVID-related news. So Falcons cornerback AJ Terrell, who was their first round pick, he missed their game, and he missed it because he got placed on the COVID reserve list. And basically what the COVID reserve list is in the event that you test positive, or you may have come into contact with somebody who may have COVID, or who does have COVID, then you're going to get placed on that list until further notice. I think they said you have to test negative for COVID once or twice before they take you off of it. It's just a precaution thing. They don't want to risk you infecting the entire team, which is the way it should be. But so far, players have done a really good job. As I kind of said going into the season, this is going to be about accountability. This is going to be about doing what's best for your team, doing what's best for your teammates, doing what's best for your brothers. If you go back to the NBA, the Rockets are no longer in the playoffs, and a big reason as to why, and look, I don't think they would have beaten the Lakers anyway, but them losing one of their key rotational pieces in Daniel House, and him missing all the rest of the series because he decided to bring a woman into his room when you are specifically not allowed to have guests at the hotel, it just kind of goes to show where the team stands with him. It goes to show where the priorities are. And that's the same thing I said for the NFL. It's going to show what your priorities are. If your priorities are about the team, you're going to follow the guidelines, you're going to follow the rules, and you're not going to let these things, you're not going to let your little urges or whatever it may be mean more to you than the team. And sometimes that's easier said than done, but it is just kind of a matter of fact. But anyways, we got a lot to get into today. I want to talk about Dolphins Jags, do a recap of the game, have some takeaways I have from the game. I want to talk about Cam Newton and Tom Brady, both of their performances so far this season. I want to get into some Eagles Bengals, and then some Josh Allen and some Baker Mayfield. So let's go ahead and let's get into this. So with the Dolphins and the Jags, they played on Thursday, and watching the game, I can't help but just be amazed by Ryan Fitzpatrick. Ryan Fitzpatrick completed 90% of his throws in that game. He was incredible. Now, I will say this, right? Going into the season, I said the Jags defense is not going to be good. There's not really any players. There's Joe Schobert. There's Henderson, the cornerback that they drafted. There's Josh Allen, the defensive end that they drafted in the first round last year. But other than that, it's just kind of a bunch of guys. Miles Jack, if he can never get back to his old form, the form he had back in his second year, the upside that they really hoped he would have, he just kind of hasn't shown it. Other than that, everyone else is just kind of a guy. No, there's not really any upside to the defense. Maybe you look at Taven Bryan, who I believe was a first-round pick of theirs a couple seasons ago as well, but it's really the offense of the Jaguars that's going to have to carry them. And during that game, they did not carry them, and they got blown out by the Dolphins. Now, for the Dolphins and Fitzpatrick, I believe this is the kind of team we're going to see all season. If you even go back to last season, the Dolphins played hard every single week. The team never once did it look like they quit. Not when they were 0-1, 0-2, 0-3, 0-4. They never ever seemed to quit, and they ended the season on a high note because they ended the season going 5-4. They ended the season beating the Patriots in Miami in an outstanding victory, and this is kind of the thing that Brian Flores is trying to do. Brian Flores said he's trying to establish a culture. Miami has not found a quarterback since they had Dan Marino. They thought maybe they found it in Ryan Tannehill. It kind of turns out he just wasn't the guy there. Now he's in Tennessee. And although he looks better, Ryan Tannehill, he's not one of the upper echelon quarterbacks. He's a solid quarterback. I think that's kind of what he's been for his entire career. Miami never really appropriately surrounded him. I think these are kind of the best pieces he has ever had in Tennessee. But again, to go back to Miami, with Ryan Fitzpatrick back in 2005 was drafted in the 7th round out of Harvard. So he's a smart guy. To go to Harvard, it doesn't matter. You're a smart guy. Even if you're there to play football, you have to be a smart guy. That's undoubted. Ryan Fitz, I think he was like a 2-time Ivy League champion. But the thing is with Harvard, it's not like they have some long, outstanding history of producing NFL players, right? They're not Alabama, they're not Michigan, they're not Ohio State, they are not these other schools. USC, that's not them. Not Oregon, none of that. But Ryan Fitzpatrick came into the league in the 7th round. In his career, he's been on 8 different teams. He has made a good deal of money. He's had some good seasons. He's had some outstanding games. He has games where he's Fitzmagic, and then he has games where he's Fitztragic. He is consistently inconsistent. But the one thing that he will always give you is he's always going to give you his all out there. Even at age 35, he is still taking off and running downfield, trying to get first downs, lowering his shoulder, out there blocking at his age. He just loves football. He is a football player. And even though he won't be in the Hall of Fame, he'll never even get consideration to be in the Hall of Fame. He will forever be he'll probably forever be his legacy. If I had to say what Ryan Fitzpatrick's legacy is going to be, it will be, he is one of the all-time great backups and all-time great teachers. Kind of like a Josh McCown. Josh McCown is well-respected in the NFL, and people will tell you, he is a great teacher, he's a great mentor to younger quarterbacks, and I believe it's the same exact thing for Ryan Fitzpatrick. I just think he's actually been a better quarterback overall than Josh McCown. But Ryan Fitzpatrick is the reason why I believe Tua is going to be able to come into the league and not necessarily have Mahomes' impact. Like, I don't think he's going to have a first season where he throws 50 touchdowns. I don't believe that. But I believe he can come into the NFL and he's going to be as prepared as any quarterback has ever been to actually step foot on the field. If we do go back to Kansas City with Mahomes during his rookie year, who was their quarterback? Alex Smith. Now, Alex Smith has head and shoulders, at least in my mind, been a better quarterback than Ryan Fitzpatrick has ever been. He's won more. He has never been the turnover machine that Ryan Fitzpatrick has been. He's probably more mobile than Ryan Fitzpatrick. If not, they have kind of the same amount of mobility. But one thing that people say about Alex Smith is that he's a great teacher. He's a professional. He does his job. And it's not like his thing with Mahomes was the first time he'd been in that situation. He was in that situation with Colin Kaepernick. And they will tell you, and Kaepernick will tell you, Alex Smith really helped him. Alex Smith, he does his job. He's not Brett Favre. He's not one of these quarterbacks where as soon as the backup is drafted or the possible successor is drafted, he shuns them and he doesn't really try and show them anything. That's not who he is. But he goes to Kansas City, has a few seasons there. Kansas City kind of sees they have a ceiling. They draft Mahomes. And he teaches Mahomes the game, and he talks him up. And then we see Mahomes for the first time in his career against the Broncos, and he had a solid game. He didn't have really flashy numbers, but they won the game. And then the next season he comes out, and he has one of the all-time great quarterback seasons. 5,000 yards, 50 touchdowns. He was incredible. And now you look at Alex Smith, now he's in Washington, now he's mentoring Dwayne Haskins. And I don't know if Dwayne Haskins is going to be the long-term starter in Washington. I have my reservations about that. I don't think Dwayne Haskins has looked necessarily great. But I am still one of these people who believe in giving younger quarterbacks more than a season or 2 or even 3 to actually attempt to learn the NFL. Let them get accustomed to the speed. Don't just rush them in there, and because they're not out the gate Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes, don't just all of a sudden quit on them. Obviously, I know it's easier to do so, but nonetheless, it's just my opinion on it. But watching that game, I really do believe Tua is going to be in a great situation. I love the way the team plays. The team believes in Brian Flores. They don't quit on him, because we have seen teams that quit on their head coach before, i.e. Washington with Jay Gruden. You look at the Jets with Todd Bowles, even though I don't know why they quit on Todd Bowles. I thought Todd Bowles was doing a great job given what he had, but they quit on him, and obviously the coaches were fired. And more teams have had to deal with that as well. I'm just kind of naming 2 off the top of my head. The team isn't quitting on Brian Flores. They're establishing a culture. I believe going forward, Tua is going to be in a great situation, and he is very, very lucky that he gets to learn from Ryan Fitzpatrick. He's very, very lucky. Even Sam Darnold was lucky that he got to learn from Josh McCown coming into the league. Patrick Mahomes was lucky that he got to learn from Alex Smith. Lamar Jackson was lucky he got to learn from Joe Flacco. One of the guys who's really unlucky this year, if anything, is Joe Burrow. Because who is he learning from? I don't even know who the backup of the Bengals is. I really don't. And yet we look at Burrow, he looks great. Can you imagine if he just had a mentor? Can you imagine if he had a veteran head coach, if he had a veteran quarterback back there? Oh my gosh, how much better could he actually look? But now to get into the Jag side of things, I feel like that was the team more people expected to see this season, but that's not the team we've gotten. In their first game, the Jags scored 27. In their second game, they scored 30, and they lost by 3. And then, of course, this week against the Dolphins, they only ended up scoring 13. Now, it was a short week for them. They played Sunday, and then they played that Thursday. The short week maybe threw them off a bit. The Dolphins play hard. Ryan Fitzpatrick was Ryan Fitzmagic that game instead of Ryan Fitztragic. So you chalk it up, it was just a loss. Their defense is not great. They're really going to struggle to get teams off the field, especially when they keep getting chunk plays, when they're running the ball well, when the quarterback's mobile. They're going to struggle. I don't believe, though, this is the Jags team we're going to see all season. I don't believe they're going to look that flat all season long, because they did look flat. The offense did not look on sync. There were drops all over the place. Minshew missed some throws. DJ Chark didn't play. It was a game where they kind of got whipped. I think Brandon Linder, their starting center, was out. They got whipped. They got a good handling to them to kind of refocus themselves, and they can now prepare for the Bengals. If you look at the Jags, their upcoming schedule, here's some of the games here. If we let's just go with their next 4 games. They face the Bengals, the Texans, the Lions, and the Chargers. And then I guess if you want to go one more game in advance, they face the Texans again. If you look at that schedule and you just think, team to team, talent to talent, offense to offense, whatever it is, the Jags could realistically win like 3 out of their next 5 games, 4 out of their next 5 games. Nonetheless, I don't believe the Jags are going to be in the running for Trevor Lawrence. It's basically what I'm trying to say. I just don't see it. And it's starting to make me think, right? All these people had this thought that it's tanking for Trevor. That's what the Jags are doing. They're tanking for Trevor. I don't know how much. Maybe it's I don't believe it. I don't know if it's that I don't believe it, or maybe it's just what I'm hoping they don't do, because there was a quote during the broadcast. One of the announcers, I forgot who was broadcasting the game, but one of the announcers brought up that a team gives a first round pick every excuse to succeed, while lower round picks are given every reason that they can't play. And if you look at Gardner Minshew, he was a late round pick. What was he, a 5th or 6th round pick? And the Jags, when they originally drafted him, they drafted him to be the backup to Nick Foles. And then it was only because of Nick Foles' injury that Minshew came out, got to play, and then we got to see Minshew Mania. And he finished his season as the highest graded rookie quarterback in the NFL. He was better than Kyler. He was better than Daniel Jones. He was better than Dwayne Haskins. And yet, he realistically could be the first one out of these 4 to not be starting this next season. He realistically could end up on the bench because of his draft status. The other 3 guys were all first round picks. The teams invested a good resource into them. They invested a good chunk of money into these quarterbacks. And whether or not you like the guys, with Dwayne Haskins, he could maybe end up on the bench because this is Ron Rivera now. This is not his quarterback. He had no influence on this draft pick. He realistically doesn't feel any attachment to Dwayne Haskins. And it's the same thing with Daniel Jones in New York. Although, entering week 3, Pro Football Focus had Daniel Jones as the 10th best quarterback in the NFL. I honestly like Daniel Jones. I hate his fumble problem. That bothers me a lot. I hate his fumble problem, but he's mobile. He can throw it. They bring up that in college he did play in a pro style system. He didn't have great talent. His numbers were never great, but he did play in a more pro style system. So he understands the game a bit better. I think Daniel Jones could actually be a really good quarterback heading into the future. And it's the same thing with Kyler. Kyler is outstanding. And heading into the season, I did bring up a list that had Kyler Murray as the best player in the league to wear number 1. Don't know if I'm with it. I still would take Cam Newton over Kyler as the best player who wears number 1. But if I had to pick a guy moving forward for my franchise, I might go ahead and take Kyler because that dude can throw it, and my God, can he run it. He's on pace right now for more rushing yards in a single season at quarterback than Lamar Jackson, who broke the record last year. But I say all that to say this. All these quarterbacks have their own thing. They all have their own little flaw. They all have their own little upside. Kyler Murray, dynamic playmaker. Right now, he's a better runner than he is a thrower. And he's like up there with Deshaun Watson when it comes to running himself into pressures and sacks. His mobility sometimes costs him. But you look at his upside. Daniel Jones, mobile. He can really throw a beautiful ball. His problem is he's a turnover machine. He fumbles too much. He'll throw a really, really bad pick here and there. But you look at his upside. He's a big kid, good arm, mobile. You want to build around that. When it comes to Dwayne Haskins, big kid, strong, big arm. But he still looks really new to the game. His rookie season, he wasn't given too much of a chance to really succeed. He had nothing around him. He had Terry McLaurin, and that was about it. An okay offensive line and a so-so run game, but Jay Gruden was there, and then he wasn't there, and then they had an interim head coach who ran the football more than he wanted to throw it. And so this is really kind of Dwayne Haskins' rookie season, so I believe they'll give him a chance. But nonetheless, because of their draft status, because of where they were taken, they will be given more chances than Gardner Minshew will. They just will. Especially because none of these guys have a mouth like Baker, right? Baker Mayfield was a first-round pick. But because of his mouth, because of his antics, because of everything he has said, along with his performance on the field, let's go ahead and let's be honest, the Browns could move off of him very quickly, and I don't think there'd be too much pushback. This is a new regime, a new GM, a new head coach, everything. They could definitely move off of him, no problem. With Minshew, and again, this might just be my belief, I think the Jags should work more on just getting the team right, getting the culture right, and building around the Minshew. He knows what he is. He throws a good ball. He's still young, so let him grow into the speed of the game. He'll get better and better, I would assume, but he knows who he is. He's mobile enough to extend plays. He's mobile enough to get first downs with his feet. He's not terribly inaccurate. He's not some major turnover machine. He so far is a good young player. He's a good young player. There's people who believe he's better than Baker Mayfield. That he's Baker Mayfield without the drama. He's funny, he's got charisma, he is right now the face of the Jacksonville franchise. Everyone knows the mustache and the glasses, it's Minshew mania. He's a guy I really think the Jags can build around. Will they do it? I don't know. They're not great when it comes to attendance. They need some star power to get fans in seats, and if they're not winning, then the next best thing from their perspective would probably be to kind of do what the Bengals did. And that is you use your number 1 overall pick on a new quarterback who's an absolute star, who is, one of the best prospects since Andrew Luck, and to get fans in the seats that way. Because if not, remember, Jacksonville this year was supposed to play, I think, 2 games in London, and there were talks that they could possibly move the Jags to London. They could move them. They could be the first team that they officially move out of America. Simply because of how bad the attendance in Jacksonville is. Again, I think they could build around Minshew. I think he's got the face and the look of a star, and that they could really market him. But will they do it? I don't know. I don't know if they will. I would probably lean with no, even though I think that is a big mistake. Anyways, coming up next, we're going to get into some Cam Newton, Tom Brady, how they have both performed so far this season. That coming up next.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. Last segment talked about the Dolphins and the Jags. Again, I think Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to be an outstanding mentor for Tua, and I think he's going to get Tua extremely prepared for his first NFL game. I think the Dolphins are going to play tough every single game, and I do not believe you cannot take them lightly. This is one of those teams that they're not the Jets, okay? The Jets, you can go ahead and snooze on them, go party the game before, and I think you can still beat the Jets by about 30. Okay, they're awful. Sam Darnold at this point is throwing to expired tuna fish. I mean, it's just awful. The Jets are terrible. When it comes to the Dolphins, though, Brian Flores, the team buys into him. The team loves him. They do play hard. They don't quit on him. Even with the lack of talent that they do have, they still play tough, and you never know if you're going to get Ryan Fitzpatrick, Ryan Fitzmagic, or Ryan Fitztragic. If you get Tragic, you'll win the game. If you get Patrick, You'll be in for a fight, but if you get Magic, you're probably gonna get thrown on for about 400 yards and like 5 touchdowns and no picks with like a perfect passer rating. All depends on what you get, but nonetheless, impressive win for the Dolphins. I still think the Jags are going to be a formidable team, as in the team that can upset people. I still believe they're not going to be in the Trevor Lawrence sweepstakes. I think they're too good for it. I think they should build around Minshew. Will they do it? Probably not, because the Jags have a history of doing everything wrong, i.e. just look at this last offseason. So I guess, we'll wait and we'll see. But anyways, let's go ahead and get into this. So, Tampa Bay and New England were very, very hot topics coming into the season, for obvious reasons. Tom Brady's now in Tampa Bay, and Cam Newton is now in New England. And you look at Tampa Bay, and you think to yourself, Tom Brady on a new team. Okay. I never thought I'd see that before. Let's see how this works. And then you look at Tampa Bay, and you look at the weapons they have, and you see the receiving core, and you see the potential in the defense. At least, the potential in the secondary. But you look at the linebacking core and the defensive line, and you're like, oh, okay. They can rush the passer. They've got linebackers that can cover. The secondary is the only question mark. The offensive line is one of the best pass-blocking offensive lines in the league. Donovan Smith, their left tackle, is a bit of a question mark, but the rest of the offensive line's pretty solid. And their rookie he hit the ground running. The rookie is good. What's his name? Is it Jedrick Wills? I think is the name. I might have it wrong, but he's hit the ground running, and he looks phenomenal. The only question is really, how is Tom Brady going to look in a new system that is in a throw-it-down-the-field style team? Well, entering Week 3, and I say entering Week 3 because Pro Football Focus hasn't exactly updated the grades yet, at least last time I checked. They haven't upgraded the grades yet, but Tom Brady entered Week 3, the third-ranked quarterback in the NFL. He's one of the leaders in big-time throws, and his receivers have actually had some pretty bad drops. You look at the game against the game against the Panthers specifically, his receivers dropped, I think, 3 touchdowns during that game. They should have won it by a much wider margin. Tom Brady has been pretty good. And I do have to say, it has surprised me, because I thought coming into the season, they would look more like they did against the Saints than anything else. I thought Tom Brady would get, maybe not necessarily tired of throwing down the field as much, but I thought he would start to compromise the offense because of what the offense wants to do. Like, he would take the check down when the actual number one read is down the field. When the big play is drawn up from Mike Evans or Chris Godwin, he would look to the check down of Scotty Miller or of a running back, something like that. But so far, he's bought in, he's looked solid, and Pro Football Focus has the stats to back it up. I'm very, very impressed because I thought and I've said it multiple times, with the shortness of training camp and practices and everything, no preseason, I thought Tom Brady was going to struggle. Every single quarterback, I've given the stat numerous times, every quarterback in their first year with Bruce Arians has led the league in turnover-worthy plays, and while Tom Brady has turned the ball over a bit, he has looked way better than I ever expected him to. And maybe that's my bad. Maybe I bought too much into the age and into how he looked last season. But we all saw him last year. He was one of the worst quarterbacks in the league. He was ranked 21st overall? So, I mean, while it's not the worst he could have been, that is not what Tom Brady is. Tom Brady is not the 21st ranked quarterback in the league. That's never been Tom Brady. Maybe in his early stage of his career, but not when Tom Brady became Tom Brady. Maybe I bought a little bit too much into it. Maybe it really was just the surrounding pieces were no longer complementary to Tom Brady's style. Maybe Bill Belichick and Josh McDaniels, maybe they weren't doing exactly what they should have done or could have done to help Tom Brady out. Maybe that's the case. Who knows? Nonetheless, Tom Brady thus far with Tampa Bay looks pretty good. This is probably going to be a playoff team. I'll talk about that in a little bit. When it comes to Cam Newton and New England, entering Week 3 again, Cam Newton was ranked 5th in the league. Tom Brady 3rd, Cam Newton was ranked 5th, behind Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Tom Brady, I believe Jared Goff, and then it was Cam Newton. Cam Newton, when it came to him in New England, there were a few question marks heading into the season, and it was, number one, how would he look with these receivers? Because Tom Brady with these receivers struggled. Cam Newton's never been the passer that Tom Brady's been. He's never been the pure thrower. He's never been the pocket passer. He's never been as accurate. How on earth could Cam Newton make it work if Tom Brady couldn't? Well, so far this season, it's been working. And it's been working phenomenally. Cam Newton looks like the Cam Newton of old. And all I have to say is, how on earth did so many teams let Cam Newton fall into Bill Belichick's lap? Whose idea was it to let Cam Newton, an MVP, fall into Bill Belichick's lap. That is so idiotic. It's so stupid. And I'm not saying Cam Newton is going to be in New England for perpetuity and that he's going to be there for the long haul. I'm not saying that, but at least for this season, the Patriots aren't going away. They are not going to be some easy team to beat. Now, granted, their schedule, at least for the first 3 weeks, is probably as easy as it's going to be for a while. Their schedule does get a bit more difficult. Again, I will talk about that in a little bit. But all this makes me think is that, at least off the top of my head, there are 2 teams that made massive, massive mistakes heading into this year. And it's the Bears and the Colts. The Bears traded for Nick Foles, who's getting paid $20 million, and they traded for him so that he could beat Trubisky out for the starting job. And he didn't do it. And he still hasn't done it. Trubisky's still starting. What a colossal failure that trade was. And then when it comes to the Colts, they signed Phillip Rivers. Now, granted, they're probably thinking about Phillip Rivers and how good he looks behind a good offensive line when he's not running for his life. That's when Phillip Rivers is at his best. I understand that. But can you imagine Cam Newton behind that offensive line, given what he is doing with New England with the lack of weapons that they have as compared to even Indianapolis? The creativity in the Chicago Bears offense that Cam Newton could have, can you imagine what he could do there? He's doing what he's doing right now with New England, with Julian Edelman, N'Keal Harry, who couldn't separate from me if I tried to cover him, and Ryan Izzo, the immortal tight end. I mean, it's a hodgepodge of everything. He has Bird, who he did throw to for a bit in Carolina, but all in all, I mean, this is a completely new system. It's built a lot around Cam Newton running the football and doing shorter passes, but he's making it work. He looks good, and obviously I think when it came to his personality and everything, it was something that the team needed. They needed a less rigid quarterback. They wanted someone who was more fun. So far, it's been working out phenomenally, but I never thought I would see 2 quarterbacks entering completely different systems than they've ever had before. Well, maybe that's more for Tampa Bay because of the bombs away style offense. For Cam Newton and the Patriots, it seems like they're kind of taking a lot of like what he did in Carolina. Like, I got to give a shout out to their offensive coordinator, McDaniels. He has done an outstanding job switching from Tom Brady, who couldn't outrun me in a 40-yard dash, switching to Cam Newton, who would outrun me by a mile, to a guy who could barely complete 60% of his passes for his career. He's still, I think, 59%, if not, he's at 60. I mean, for him to switch to this guy who's 6'6", like 250, can run, has a rocket arm, to switch to him and to have the kind of success they've had on offense is amazing. He's done a great job. Josh McDaniels, clearly, at least in my mind, he's an offensive coordinator. He's not a head coach. He tried it. He failed. I think he's an offensive coordinator. That is where he does his best work. I gotta give him kudos. They're making Cam Newton, and I won't say they're just making him, because Cam Newton, for all the scrutiny he got, I never quite understood a lot of it. People were out here talking about how, oh, well, is he really going to be focused? You know, can he drop the ego? How is he going to look? Is he going to Cam Newton and Brady, this is something that makes them both good. This is what makes them great. Obviously, Brady greater than Cam Newton, but this is what makes them both great players. They are both football nerds. They both study. They both watch film. They both watch hours of film. They both take their jobs very, very seriously. They take their fitness and their health very, very seriously. And Bill Belichick has been very complimentary of that when it comes to Cam Newton. Obviously with Brady, we just know he does it. But with Cam Newton, he clearly does it. And for whatever reason, there was this stigma around him where people believed that Cam Newton was a malcontent, that he was a me guy. He wasn't about the team, and I just don't think that was ever fair. I don't think it was ever true. I don't know who started the rumor or who started perpetuating that narrative, but they should be ashamed of themselves. I know a lot of people in sports media, they try to say, oh, Bill Belichick and Cam Newton, the personalities wouldn't work. It's been working fantastic so far. And Cam Newton talked about it, and he said, the Patriot way is like a breath of fresh air to him. When you look at Cam Newton, you look at Tom Brady. Cam Newton, his style directly reflects his personality. He's loud, he's colorful, he likes to talk, he's got $1 million smile, he's talking to his team, to the other team. He is all about having fun. Tom Brady, I think he doesn't have much of a personality. Tom Brady is kind of your basic dude. He's very PC. He has been a bit less PC as of recent, but he's been very PC. He doesn't wear really too many flashy clothes. He's pretty standard. I think he thinks he's a bit more funny than he actually is. Hence, Tommy and Gronky, which was 8 minutes of my life that I'm never ever gonna get back. Whew, and I didn't even make it through the 8 minutes. I made it about 2.5. And I turned it off because I just couldn't handle it. And I've listened to some snippets of it here and there. It's awful. Tom Brady will not have a future in comedy. That has been made very, very clear to me. But what's also been made clear to me is that Tom Brady and Bill Belichick just needed to separate. They just needed new changes of scenery. For Tom Brady, it was literally a new team. He needed a new environment to be around. For Bill Belichick, he just needed a new quarterback. He needed a new guy to coach. He needed a new challenge. There's some people out there who will quit their job because it's no longer challenging. Once you start just getting into a routine, once it's no longer challenging you, once you're no longer thinking about it, there are people out there who will quit their job and who will look to do something else because they're just no longer interested. I don't know if that was necessarily Bill Belichick or how much of it was he wanted the credit, he wanted to show everyone what he can do. I have no idea. So far this season, looking pretty good. It's looking pretty good for Bill Belichick and honestly for Tom Brady. They're both looking like they're kind of validating each other. They're kind of validating that they both just worked well together. They're just, that's really, if anything that's been showed so far, is that they're just both validating they're both great. They're both great at their position. They're both GOATs at their position. But you look at, what was the problem with Tom Brady in New England last year? It was, Julian Edelman was a drop machine. N'Keal Harry wasn't looking good. He was on IR, and then he finally came back, and Tom Brady just wasn't really giving him any chances, and Tony Michel was in the doghouse, and then Cam Newton comes there, and he actually makes N'Keal Harry look like a guy who can actually play. Like maybe he's not a bust. Maybe he can actually do something. He's already done more this year than he did all of last year. And he played more games last year than he did this year so far. But maybe that says more about Tom Brady. Remember I talked about an article where it detailed players in New England were honestly fine with Tom Brady leaving. In fact, they thought it was probably better for the team if he did leave. And it was because Tom Brady became more rigid. He became more, I guess, his attitude changed. He became more hard. He became more, seemed more stressed out. He was more business. And I think it was because Tom Brady was trying to maximize his last few years, but he looked around him and he saw that the environment, the pieces weren't getting better around him. The team wasn't drafting receivers. It wasn't drafting offensive line help. It wasn't drafting tight ends. It just wasn't really giving him anything more to work with. And when it comes to working with tight ends, Tom Brady's at this stage in his career where if you're a rookie, and actually, go back a few seconds. I meant working with rookies, not tight ends. When he's working with rookies, just rookies in general, especially if you're a receiver, okay? If you're a rookie and Tom Brady is your quarterback, you need to hit the ground and you need to hit it running. You can't hit the ground and then sort of stumble and then one day you're walking and then the next day you've regressed to where you're back in diapers and you can't even figure out how to sit up. You can't do that with Tom Brady anymore. I just don't feel like he's not in the mental place in his career to want to help you get better. You need to just be able to work and do your job. You need to come into the league and be Odell Beckham, Michael Thomas, A.J. Brown, Terry McLaurin, Darius Slayton with the Giants. You need to come in and be able to produce and do your job at least NFL level. You don't need to be the best of the best, but just be able to do your job at a competent level. N'Keal Harry didn't really do that. And you look over in Tampa Bay. He's got a rookie in Scotty Miller. Scotty Miller has hit the ground, and he's hit it running. He's a good slot receiver, and he's already, you could probably argue, Tom Brady's favorite target, one of his favorite targets. He's a lot like a younger Julian Edelman. You need to hit the ground running, and that's not what N'Keal Harry did. And so Tom Brady, whether it's fair or not, didn't really give him much of a chance. Cam Newton, however, is giving him the chance. And it's also a bonus that N'Keal Harry has entered the season healthy. Right? Last season he didn't. This season he's entered it healthy. While he is still slower, he still doesn't really separate. He's a bigger bodied receiver, and Cam Newton so far has worked with him better than Tom Brady did with him. But with both of these teams, and I kind of look at their schedule, New England is going to have a very, very difficult stretch coming up here soon. Now, obviously, their first 3 games you could probably say are the easiest games they're going to have for a while. They saw off against the Dolphins, and then it was the Seahawks. The Seahawks are the Seahawks, but then it was the Raiders. So, I mean, the Raiders and Dolphins, 2 of their easier games. But up next, they have the Chiefs. I think they're going to lose that game. I know the Chiefs haven't exactly looked like the Chiefs. They haven't been as well oiled. They haven't been as explosive, but they're still great. Mahomes is still great. They have like the second best kicker in the league. They're going to lose that to the Chiefs. Then they take on the Broncos. The Broncos have just been riddled with injuries. They signed Blake Bortles. They're going to win that game. Against the Niners, I think it's kind of going to depend who's healthy. The Niners are losing player after player after player to IR, and even though when you go on IR now, you're back in 3 weeks. I still think, I think there's a real chance New England could win that game. Depending on the health of everybody, I really think New England could win that game. The Bills, we will wait and see. Has Josh Allen figured out Bill Belichick, or is Bill Belichick still Josh Allen's father? The Jets, yeah. Yeah, the Jets. Yeah, the Jets are the Jets. So, I mean, that'll be a lot easier. But New England's schedule, it has some tough games mixed in with some easier games, some games that are kind of a toss-up. You take, the Patriots or the Texans, the Cardinals or the Patriots, the Chargers or the Patriots. It all kind of depends. These games could kind of go either which way, but it probably will come down to just who is the better head coach, who can coach better, who coaches the team up better, who makes the better adjustments. Through history, that's been Bill Belichick. Whereas, you look at Tampa Bay has some really, really intriguing games. Now, they got some cakewalks, at least in my mind, games that'll be cakewalks, right? They face the Panthers again. I think that'll be easy. They face the Vikings, the Falcons, the Lions, the Falcons again, of course. They have some easier games. And the way they close out the season is especially easy because that's when they face the Vikings, the Falcons, the Lions, and the Falcons again. But in the middle of all that, they've got some really interesting games. Their next game is against the Chargers. Now, I think they're going to win that game, but I would not be surprised if the Chargers gave them a real good fight. The Bears, it's going to depend on what Mitch Trubisky are we getting. Are we getting Mitch or are we getting Mitchell? Which one are we getting? Trubisky or are we getting Trubisky? Yeah, which one are we getting? And Matt Nagy, he's going to have one of his best play calling games of his career. I think the Bears could win it. I think their defense is great. Jalen Johnson, I believe that's his name. Their rookie corner is outstanding so far. We will wait and we'll see. I think that could be a really intriguing game. The Packers and Bucks, with the way Aaron Rodgers has been playing this season, there might be no shot for the Buccaneers to win that game. They face the Saints again. They face the Rams, the Chiefs. At least a Raiders team that can score points. I mean, they do have some games here where the teams have been together, where the players and the coaching staff has been together longer. They're more familiar with each other. Some of these teams have more creative play calling. They could really make it difficult for Tampa Bay. I think Tampa Bay is still going to be a playoff team. But I had them finishing the season maybe around 10-6, 9-7. I would predict they probably are going to lose to the Rams. They'll probably lose to the Chiefs. I think they'll probably lose to the Saints again. I think they'll lose to the Packers. I think they could lose to the Bears. I do not think those are going to be games that are going to be easy, and just because they have all the offensive firepower in the world, I don't think it just means they're going to, run away with it. I don't. So, I think both these teams will be playoff teams in the very end, but the road to getting there is going to be far more difficult than I think anybody anticipated. Anyways, coming up next, Eagles, Bengals. Let's talk about that game. I wanted to make sure I watched it, and I want to talk about what I saw in it. And then coming up in my final topic of the day, we're going to talk some Josh Allen, some Baker Mayfield, young quarterback talk, as always. Stay tuned.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. Last segment talked about Cam Newton and Tom Brady and how they have played thus far this season. Even though it is early, they have both played very, very well, and I have honestly just been very impressed with the fact that these two quarterbacks are in new teams for the first time in their life, new systems, new head coaches, new targets, new everything, and yet they've both been able to perform as well as they have. I think both of their schedules do get interesting. While I think Tampa Bay's is easier, obviously New England has the number 1 ranked schedule. While I do think Tampa Bay's is easier, there are some games that I think could cause some road bumps as they move on. I think the Bears could, especially, depending on if it's Mitch starting or Nick Foles starting, and if it's Mitch, it's which Mitch are you going to get. I think the Rams could cause them problems. I think they face the Chiefs this season as well. And then as for the Patriots, their schedule gets really tough. Buffalo is a great team. They've proved they're a great team, at least so far. I think they could struggle, but for these two guys individually, I think it's a testament to their greatness. It's a testament to how hard they work, and I'm very, very impressed by them. So let's go and move on. So a game that I had to make sure that I watched this weekend was Eagles versus the Bengals. And the reason why I wanted to watch this game so bad is not only is it because it's Joe Burrow's 3rd game, and he's facing probably the toughest, at least the toughest defensive line that he has faced yet in the NFL. Pro Football Focus has the Eagles defensive line, at least going into week 3, had it rated as the number 1 defensive line. Then you look at how they performed. They beat him to hell. But I also wanted to make sure I watched this game because I honestly thought that the Eagles were going to fall to 0-3. I thought that the Bengals were going to pick up their first victory, and that Carson Wentz, the next day, all the articles were going to be about, oh my God, what is wrong with Carson Wentz? How could Carson Wentz lose this game? And while the articles aren't exactly that, there's still those who are wondering what is wrong with Carson Wentz. So I want to go ahead and I want to talk about this game from both sides of it. We're going to go ahead and start with the Eagles. Keep this in mind. Heading into this game, Pro Football Focus had Carson Wentz ranked as the 33rd worst quarterback in the NFL. Okay? The 33rd, not 30th, not 31st, not 32nd. There's only 32 teams. He was ranked 33rd. He was terrible, and Carson Wentz has been maligned and scrutinized all throughout sports media. Pro Football Focus individually has said he is the reason the Eagles are struggling. And I've been reading some articles and I've been looking at certain things that analysts are saying and what they're seeing in Carson Wentz, and there's kind of this consensus opinion that Carson Wentz is doing too much. Carson Wentz, he's holding the ball too long, he's trying to make the spectacular throw, he's not just taking what the defense is giving him, he's just making bad reads, he's holding on to, and that he's really costing his team. Now, granted, his offensive line is not good. His offensive line has taken a lot of hits. Jason Peters is not the same left tackle. There's clearly a reason, and I think it was very obvious in that game against the Bengals. It is obvious why they didn't want to re-sign Peters. And it's obvious why, even when they did re-sign him, they wanted to play him at guard, not at tackle. They did not want to put him on an island. And Jason Peters struggled the entire day. Carson Wentz was under pressure multiple times. And Carson Wentz still even in this game. I mean, he's become a turnover machine. Another game in which he had multiple turnovers. He threw 2 terrible interceptions. I mean, one was tipped over the middle, but even then, the linebacker was in pretty good position to still make the pick, even if it didn't get tipped. And then he forced another one. It got picked off. Again, he's holding the ball too long. And I think what's really frustrating with Wentz is that you see some of the plays at the end of the game where he's making the throw, he's making the scramble, he's getting the touchdown, and you see these plays where his talent comes out and it's clear why the Eagles drafted him where he did. It's clear to see why in his second year he was the leading candidate for MVP until he got hurt. You still see some of those flashes. But the problem is that you see this flash, but then it's accompanied by a bunch of average plays, it's accompanied by a terrible play, by a turnover, and then it's just basically all for nothing. And I'm trying to figure out with this Bengals defense, am I underestimating their defense? Is their defense actually great? I know they have a few really good players. Jesse Bates is a really good player. Dunlap, even though he's older, I mean, he's a solid defensive end. Lawson, he's just kind of inconsistent. He flashed as a rookie, and he's just kind of been here and there. He's an up and down player. When it comes to their linebacking core, I don't really know any of their linebackers. I know that William Jackson III is a good young corner, but he's not top 5. I don't know if he's top 10, but yet the Eagles struggled so much. And yes, again, they're battling a lot of injuries. This is not the same team that was going into the season. They were graded much, much higher when they were coming into the season than how they've been now. And they still didn't end up winning the game, but they didn't lose the game either. The game ended in a tie. So now both of these teams are 0-2, and when I look at the Eagles' schedule, I don't think this is going to get any better for them. I think the Eagles are going to be, and maybe I didn't see this coming, I honestly think the Eagles are going to be one of the 10 worst teams in the league. Here's their upcoming schedule. So they go up against the Niners. Now, the Niners, they dominated the Giants, but then again, the Giants are the Giants. They are god-awful. They might be the second worst team after the Jets, but they face the Niners. Depending on if Jimmy Garoppolo's playing or not, I have no idea, but I'd probably take them to lose that game against Pittsburgh, that defensive front. I know they struggled with the Texans for a bit, but that defensive front, I think they're going to lose to the Steelers. The Ravens will beat them. They'll probably beat the Giants. Against the Cowboys, I think it's kind of a toss-up. Then they take on the Giants again. I mean, this Eagles team, realistically, I think could be under 500 this season. They're just not good. And remember, they face Washington again. We saw what Washington did to Wentz in the second half, and what they did to him all game, which was put pressure on him, hit him, and sack him. Carson Wentz, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it is... I mean, you have to remember, right? During his MVP year, his MVP, campaign, you have to remember, he got hurt. And then he ended up missing all of the playoff success, and he didn't play in the Super Bowl. Okay, and they won the Super Bowl. And then reports came out over the following year and a half or so that his attitude in the locker room wasn't the best. That he was a bit of a poor leader. There was some jealousy there. And Carson Wentz did come out and he acknowledged it, and he talked about it, and he said he realized that he was not the best leader. So I don't know what it is. Is Carson Wentz trying to make up for lost time? Is he trying to make up for some of the injuries? I don't know. I don't know if he's trying to validate his contract. I don't know what he's doing, but he's not playing like himself. The Carson Wentz I saw last year was incredible. And of course you can say it was an easier schedule towards the end of it, but you look at the amount of injuries he had on his receiving core and who he was throwing to. He made that work, and he won the division and went to the playoffs, but then of course he got hurt. One thing that I have talked about with Wentz is the fact that every single year he's been in the NFL, he has gotten banged up. He got banged up his rookie year, and then if you look at his last 3 seasons, whether it's the regular season or the postseason, he hasn't finished it healthy. MVP year, he's out for the year. Week 13 or something? He wrecked his knee, he's out for the year. Next year, he has he suffered another injury, he's again out for the year, and Nick Foles comes in, takes him to the playoffs, they win a game, then they lose, he misses that. And then last year, goes to the playoffs, in the first half, the first quarter, he gets hurt, and he's done for the entire game. This is just kind of the history of Wentz, and then you see his play style. He's running in the safeties, he's running in the linebackers, he's lowering his shoulder. I mean, he plays a reckless style of football that I think is good. Again, it will get him hurt. And how bad his offensive line is this season, I would not be surprised if once again he gets banged up. And then the question's going to be, do they bring in Jalen Hurts? Jalen Hurts is waiting. And even though they brought him in and they talk about how they want to be some developmental place, they want to develop quarterbacks, they want to, and so that then maybe one day they can trade him. And I mean, would they maybe put Jalen Hurts in just to give their team a spark? If their team falls, I mean, because what are their next 2 games? It's the Niners, Steelers, and then Ravens. So if they fall to 0-5-1, do they maybe put Jalen Hurts in? I would maybe lean with no, just because they gave Carson Wentz the contract that they did. But could it be maybe a good idea? I'm not going to say they're wrong. It could be. It could be maybe all they can do to salvage their season and not have their team kind of mutiny. Again, the reports have already come out. Players have already said, I guess in private, that Carson Wentz's leadership has not always been the best. You've Colin Cowherd out here now, putting out the message that because he wears a backwards hat, he's not ready to be a franchise quarterback, yada, yada, yada. It was a very, very ugly game. And so then to kind of go over to the Bengals side of things, Burrow is doing this by himself. People do realize that, right? He's doing this by himself, and he's getting killed by defenses. The Eagles sacked him 8 times. And let's not forget, he got hit multiple other times. Malik Jackson put the wood on him. I'm sure Burrow woke up the next day really, really sore from that hit. I mean, it rocked him. He put a smackdown on Joe Burrow. That was his welcome to the NFL moment. It's an illegal hit, but he's going to get hit like that a lot more in his career. He better kind of get used to it, because it's not going to be the only time he gets thumped by a defensive lineman. But this is kind of crazy to me. With Joe Burrow, once again, no run game. He's facing the highest graded defensive line in the NFL. No run game. AJ Green looks like a shell of himself. His offensive line is terrible. And just like he did to the Chargers, just like he did to the Browns, he kept them in the game with his arm. He threw it 61 times last week. He threw it 44 times against the Eagles. So he's thrown the ball in 2 weeks over 100 times. In 2 games, he has thrown the ball over 100 times and has not thrown an interception. Joe Burrow is the real deal, and I don't think there's any debate about that. This kid's, he is legit, and the only thing that's going to hold Joe Burrow back will be the Bengals. And if the Bengals cannot get him some kind of protection, they need to get him an offensive line as soon as possible, because he has it. He had a play on the sideline where, he was running to his right, and Eagles coming for him. He kind of stops, he spins, he starts running again, and then he threw a dart down the sideline for a sideline grab by one of his receivers. And it's just, you look at plays like that and you're like, oh my God. And then you look at how the end of that game went. The Bengals have the lead. They have a touchdown lead. They literally needed to give up a touchdown for the Eagles to even tie it, and the defense just did. The defense was gassed at the end, and again, the defense, I don't think it's that great, but as on that last drive, you see some of the greatness of Wentz and his ability to put the team on his back, and he ran it in for the touchdown, and then obviously overtime was just kind of a mess. Neither team could really do anything, and ultimately they ended up tying. Which it probably isn't a great feeling for Burrow, and I can't imagine it's a great feeling for Carson Wentz, and I especially can't imagine it's a good feeling for that defense given all the work that they did. That defense is the only reason, I believe at this point, it is the only reason that Carson Wentz will ever be in a game. And again, I don't think it's all his fault. I think his offensive line is terrible. It is bad. You lose your starting left tackle. You lose your starting all-pro guard who won best offensive lineman in the league last year by Pro Football Focus. And Lane Johnson is kind of banged up heading into the season. Jason Kelce, while still good, he is an older center. And your left tackle is now Jason Peters, who looks kind of done. Watching that game, I mean, these looked like very evenly matched teams. I didn't see much of a difference between the Bengals and the Eagles. And it was a hard game to watch. I mean, it was so hard to watch. While other games that started at 10 o'clock were ending, the Bengals game was still going on, and the Seahawks game was starting, and all the 1 o'clock games were starting, and the Bengals game was still going on. And then ultimately there was no winner. I think if anything, if you had to take away like any kind of moral victory, I just think the Bengals should feel good about themselves because they have their guy. Joe Burrow is the real deal. When it comes to Wentz and the Eagles need to figure out something. They need to figure out something as soon as possible because Carson Wentz looks like a shell of himself. And maybe it's because he knows his offensive line is bad, and so he's trying to make up for it. He's trying to make the spectacular play. I don't know exactly what it is, but it does not look good. And for the longest time, people have, and I've been one of the people who have argued Carson Wentz is better than Dak, and that he's better than Goff, because I saw what Carson Wentz did last year with the banged up supporting cast he had, and I watched him lead his team, put the team on his shoulders and lead them into the playoffs, and now I look at him and I'm just like, I can't put him over Dak. I can't even put him over Goff. I just can't. Even given Goff's performance in against the Bills, which for the first half, yes, it was bad, and we're going to talk about that in a second, but I can't put Wentz over Dak, and I don't think I can put him over Goff. It's with just the way he's playing now. Realistically, when you look at his career, I mean, he had one really, really good season. And it was his second year, and since then, he has been an average to below average quarterback who's been kinda turnover prone, and who's been injury prone. That is Carson Wentz right now. He came into college injury prone, it has only caught up to him, and now he just doesn't look the same. In a Bengals team with a rookie quarterback, your defense gets 8 sacks, and you couldn't beat them? That is an indictment on Wentz. I don't care what anyone says, that is an indictment on Wentz. And it's only a matter of time before Philadelphia faithful, those fans, the media, there's only a matter of time before someone starts pounding the desk saying, put Hurts in. We don't care that you gave Carson Wentz a big contract. Put the rookie in. Let's just see what he can do. And even though I don't know if it would really lead to wins, I think if anything, it would be that thing of, it just gives your team a spark. Can you give your team a spark and make them feel like they have a chance? And I guess, when it comes to Burrow, The takeaways for the Bengals, they have their guy. They need to get him a number one receiver. I don't think it's AJ Green. I think AJ Green at this stage of his career is too old, too slow, too banged up. I'm sure his hands are still great and he's still a sure-handed receiver. The problem is he's not getting open because he's not really a part of this, of the offense. It's more Tyler Boyd and it's all the other guys. So I don't know. I don't know when it comes to AJ Green. Maybe he's just not getting the opportunities. Maybe Burrow's not looking for him. I don't know what it is, but they need to get him a number one receiver. They need to get a better offensive line, not only for him, but for Joe Mixon, so that they actually feel like they can give Mixon the football, because I don't know if 17 carries is enough, and I know how weird that sounds given the age of football we are in when it's so pass heavy, but as a rookie quarterback, a run game can be very beneficial. Even as a younger quarterback, not necessarily a rookie, a run game can be very, very beneficial. And so I don't know. I think the Bengals should be happy. They should be happy. They're only moving in the right direction. Burrow looks legit. And it just kind of comes down to protecting him and making sure he can end this season healthy, because he has taken a beating through his first 3 games. He's been hit more in his first 3 games than he probably got hit at LSU. His entire career at LSU. I don't know. That might be a bit of an over-exaggeration, but I mean, you've seen it. I mean, he is just getting pummeled. The Chargers, the the Browns, the Eagles. He faces Blitzburg twice. He has still yet to face them once. He faces them twice. He faces the Ravens twice. He faces the Browns again. And he's going to continue to face them throughout his career that he's in this division. They got to get an offensive line around him. I like what I saw from him. They've clearly shown that they have all the faith in the world in him to make the right throw, to put the ball in his hands. Again, he's thrown 100 times, over 100 times in 2 games as a raw rookie. I don't know if that's ever happened before, but I'm impressed with him, with Wentz. Even though they didn't lose, I'm very discouraged watching that game. Anyways, coming up next, final topic of the day, Josh Allen and Baker Mayfield. We're going to talk about the games that they had, some of my takeaways from it. I like what I saw from both, and I think I have a bit more to say about Josh Allen than Baker, but nonetheless, we're going to talk some young quarterbacks. That coming up next. Stay tuned.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. Last segment did a recap of the Eagles and the Bengals. I think the Eagles and Eagles fans should be very, very discouraged by what they saw in Carson Wentz, and I believe that they are. And then when it comes to Joe Burrow, I understand Bengals fans probably really wanted that win. For a while, they probably really thought they were going to get the win. While they didn't get the win, they didn't lose, they ended up tying. I just think they should be so happy that they managed to draft Joe Burrow. He is the real deal. I think he's legit. Now it just comes down to, can the franchise surround him with the pieces he needs to be successful, because he's in a division with 3 of the best defenses in the league, at least 3 of the best pass rushes in the league, and their offensive line is not good, and he is getting beat down. I am sure every single morning he is waking up as sore as can be, because his line's not protecting him. He's getting sacked like crazy. I'm pretty sure he's the most sacked, or at least he's top 5, top 3 most sacked quarterbacks in the NFL so far. But you gotta be impressed with his numbers. No interceptions. I don't even think he's turned the ball over. Maybe a fumble. I can't exactly recall. But he's been fantastic. And while his Pro Football Focus grade might not show it, he does make some of the rookie mistakes. He misses guys open, doesn't always make the throw. He has been very impressive to me, especially against the Eagles. The fact that he got sacked 8 times and didn't lose that game is incredible. Maybe that's more of a testament to how bad the Eagles are, but whatever. I'll give the credit to Joe Burrow. He's a rookie, by the way. So, speaking of young quarterbacks, one quarterback that I talked about in my last show, that I'm going to talk about in this show as well, is Josh Allen. In my last show, I talked about Josh Allen and how well he had performed, and how, at the moment, I was eating my crow. Because coming into the season, I said, the Bills might really need to look at finding a new quarterback after this season, because Josh Allen, coming into this season, was one of the worst quarterbacks when it came to his accuracy. If not, he was the worst quarterback when it came to his accuracy. He was terrible throwing deep. He was okay throwing, short passes. He was far, far better throwing short passes than deep passes. And when you looked at his receiving core and the talent that was there and the division they're in and how short windows are, especially when it comes to rookie quarterback contracts and surrounding them with the pieces, I looked at the team and I said, this offseason, guys like Dak Prescott become available. Cam Newton will probably become available. Andy Dalton will probably be available. Do the Bills maybe look at signing one of them? Would Dak want to go play in Buffalo with that roster, that coaching staff? Would he be down? Maybe. I gotta take a lot of that back. And one thing I said in my last podcast was, the Bills' next game is against the Rams. The Rams' defense, and maybe this is more of a credit to, and this was only with 2 games for a sample size, right? They had allowed the lowest passer rating in the league. I think that was more of a testament to how bad Carson Wentz is more than a testament to how good their defense is. Because Josh Allen tore them apart. And I understand he did have the 1 interception on his mark. It's his first interception of the season. But I have to say, I don't know if that was an interception. I need to see more angles of that pick. I do. I need to see more angles. Because I could have swore a tie goes to the receiver, and the receiver, even though he had a push off, he did catch the ball first. So I don't know. Did they have an angle of it that I just didn't get to see? Because they gave him an interception, and then they reviewed it, and they still counted it as an interception. I didn't think it was fair. And Allen, he did have another fumble, which was bad. But throughout the game, the first half, right? Let's just go ahead and start there. Through the first half of the game, the Bills dominated. I mean, they absolutely dominated. Their defense completely shut down the Rams, and their defense couldn't figure out Josh Allen. He was on target, he was dicing up their defense, and then you look at how they played in the red zone. Allen had to deal with penalty after penalty after penalty on whichever team it was, and then they finally scored their first touchdown, and then another, and all of a sudden it's 28-3. We've seen that score before. 28-3. Heading into halftime. And I'm looking at this game and I'm thinking to myself, oh my God. Wow, the Bills are about to blow out the Rams. And then that interception happens on what I thought at first was an incredible catch. Of course it would have been negated no matter what. But then the interception happens, and then the Rams came alive. And all of a sudden, they cut the game down to 11, and then they cut the game down to 3, and then all of a sudden they're up. And at this point in time, the Bills are falling apart. They're penalizing themselves. Josh Allen is complaining to the refs because he's getting tackled in weird ways. He's face masking people. He feels like he's not getting the calls that he wants. And it seemed like all of a sudden, the referees, because of a bad call on an interception, screwed the Bills over. It seemed like all the momentum now was with the Rams, and the Bills were going to lose the game, and they were going to pull a Falcons. And they were going to completely lose the game, and it was going to be demoralizing for the team, and that outstanding performance by their entire team was going to go to waste. And then what happens? They get the ball, 4 minutes left on the clock. Josh Allen drives his team down the field, and all of a sudden they're facing a 4th down. And I'm gonna be completely honest here. I think there was a bit of a makeup call. I did not see pass interference. I did not see it at all. I think the refs kind of gave the Bills a bit of a makeup call there. The game probably should have been over right there, but it wasn't. It's football. Things happen. They decided to throw a flag. I think they kind of deserved it because of that blown interception that they called against Josh Allen and the Bills. But nonetheless, it is whatever. Josh Allen, though, drives his team down the field. They score a touchdown, and they win the game against the Rams that this season, through at least the first 3 weeks, have looked like the Rams offensively. And Aaron Donald is still a monster. Jalen Ramsey is, they have a pretty good secondary with Johnson, their safety, and Ramsey and Hill. But I can't take anything away from Josh Allen. 5 total touchdowns on the season. He has 1,000 yards, 10 passing touchdowns, and 1 fluky interception. I can't take anything away from Josh Allen. I really can't. He has been one of the best passers in the league. Even though his grades might not show it, he misses guys, he waits too long to throw some balls, so the grade gets a worse grade on it than if he threw it on time. I get all that. But he is a football player, and he's only getting better. I mean, he really is only getting better. Who would have thought that the 2 best quarterbacks coming out of that 2018 draft, at least through 3 seasons, who would have thought the 2 would be Lamar Jackson, the guy who should have maybe thought about moving to wide receiver, the guy who's more of a running back than a quarterback. Who would have thought it'd be Lamar Jackson? And one of the most inaccurate quarterbacks to come out of college, Josh Allen, over Rosen, who was called at one point by some analysts the most pro-ready quarterback, Sam Darnold, who people were comparing to Andrew Luck, and Baker Mayfield, who some people compared to Drew Brees, who was the Heisman winner, had the best statistical season by a college quarterback in NFL history before, Kyler Murray ended up breaking it. Who would have thought Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, through their first 3 years, would be the ones standing on top? It's incredible. I said going into the season, I thought New England still ran the AFC East. So far, the Bills, they run the AFC East. I can't even lie. So far, they run it. Stephon Diggs, that acquisition was outstanding. Their offensive line, what their coaching staff has done, Brian Daboll and their head coach McDermott, what they have done is they have put together an incredible football team that I think is really ready to make a playoff run. We'll see what they do against New England. I still do want to see how Josh Allen performs against Bill Belichick. But I'm very impressed with this team, and I can't wait to see what they do in the future as the season moves forward. Now, Baker Mayfield, of course, the number 1 overall pick in the 2018 draft, he played against Washington. Now, they ended up winning. They won 34-20. Dwayne Haskins threw 3 interceptions and just did not look good. In the first half, he looked okay, and then, of course, he kind of brought the game back in the second half, but 3 interceptions later, the Browns ended up winning the game. Now, I said for this game, Baker Mayfield was really going to have to watch himself, and he needed to play well, no matter what. Even though Washington has one of the best defensive fronts in football, and they did get a few sacks. Their Chase Young did end up leaving the game with a groin injury. I haven't seen any updates on it, so I don't know the severity of it. But even though he was facing that team, I said he needed to play well. One of the reasons, and I don't think I brought this up, but it's because after the game against the Bengals, and he's doing the interview, he said, he didn't have any comments for his haters or for his doubters, but one thing he did say, and even then, I feel like it was probably a comment he didn't need to make. He said, in the Mayfield household, we don't forget. Basically, he's saying he's not going to forget about the critics. He's not going to forget about your criticism, and what everyone is saying, he's going to remember it. Well, if he then went and he laid an egg against Washington, the critics would be right back, and they'd be right back in full force, and they would say, hey, Baker, we don't forget either. We're right, we're right here. What happened, Baker? What's up with the performance? And you look at the way that Baker performed, he didn't have outstanding numbers. He was 16 of 23, 156 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Nick Chubb again was a monster on the ground. He had 19 carries for 108 yards, 2 touchdowns. Kareem Hunt is sharing the rock. He had 16 carries himself. Odell Beckham was once again their leading receiver. He had 4 for 59. Not really big numbers. I still don't really like the defense. I like what they did against the Washington, but again, I think that's more of a product of Dwayne Haskins. I think Dwayne Haskins is still a bit rough around the edges. He needs more work. And I saw there's some people saying it might be time to put Alex Smith in. Can we not be ridiculous? No. No. Do not put Alex Smith in. Alex Smith does not need to go back in. It's only 3 games in. Alex Smith literally just got cleared to even resume football activities. Let's give the kid a chance. He won week 1. He did lose week 2. I understand that. And then he lost this week. I get it. But let's not throw Alex Smith in. But Mayfield and the Browns, this is the recipe to success. They need to run Nick Chubb and run Kareem Hunt. Give Odell Beckham, 6, 7 targets. Give the same amount of targets to Landry. And then when it comes to the defense, it's all going to be dependent really on that defensive line. Garrett was great. Richardson had a sack. Eventually they need to get Olivier Vernon back. I don't know when he's going to be back, but eventually they'll get him back. I like Ogunjobi. I like their secondary. I think it's young. I still think they need some help. But all in all, I like the way that they played. And when I look at the remaining Cleveland Browns schedule, by the way, they're now 2-1. This is the first time Cleveland has had a winning record, has been above 500 since 2014. 2014. Think about that. My God. It's been that long since they've had a winning record. I looked ahead at Cleveland's schedule, and I looked at their next few games. They have the Cowboys, the Colts, Steelers, Bengals, Raiders, Texans, and then Eagles. Just to name a few of their games. It's basically what I could fit in the screenshot. Against the Cowboys, I gotta say, I like Cleveland's chances. Against the Colts, I don't think their defense is anything really too special. I like Darius Leonard, I like their defensive line, but their secondary I don't think is that great. Look, what they did to Sam Darnold, I think that's a product of Sam Darnold and Adam Gase and the lack of weapons. I don't think their secondary is that good. So I'd probably take Cleveland. I think they're going to win that game. The Steelers, that's a toss-up. It could go either way. It's a division rivalry game. Baker Mayfield hasn't been terrible against Pittsburgh. I think they could probably win that game. But just, if I was to look at Cleveland's next 5 games against the Cowboys, Colts, Steelers, Bengals, and Raiders, I realistically can see the Browns winning 4 of their next 5 and being about 6-2 heading into their game against the Texans. I think the Browns are going to be a playoff team this year. And it's going to be because of complementary play between Baker Mayfield and the running game. Everything for Cleveland is based off of their running game. One of the biggest additions they made, or maybe you could say the 2 biggest additions this team made, is them signing Jack Conklin and them drafting the rookie tackle that they then went ahead and moved over to left tackle. Those were 2 of the best moves Cleveland could have made, because their offensive line, for the most part, has been able to protect Baker. They've been able to keep him more clean. They're outstanding when it comes to run blocking. They have 2 of the best, they probably have the best 1-2 punch in the NFL at running back, and all Baker Mayfield really has to do is play his game. Now, against the Texans, I think they're going to lose that game. But then even after that, they face the Eagles. And are we going to sit here and say that the Eagles have a chance? They couldn't even beat Washington. The Browns just beat up on Washington. They couldn't beat the Bengals. The Browns beat the Bengals. And I know you can't always correlate the 2. And of course the Eagles, they do have a chance. Every team has a chance. There's always a chance for injuries and there's calls. And maybe the Eagles somehow, some way figure things out and they start upping their performance. But if I had to project going into the future, if I had to look going 9 games into the future, I would say Cleveland's probably going to be somewhere around 7-2, 6-3, maybe maybe 5-4. no matter what, I see them being above 500. And I say the 5-4 mainly because there's fumbles that happen, there's bad calls that happen, there could be an injury, you never quite know what's going to happen. But I love the run game, I love their play calling, I think Baker Mayfield's buying more into it, I think he looks more confident, he's playing more within himself, and that is what the Browns need him to do. To be quiet, not really talk, and just play football. Do what a number 1 overall pick is supposed to do. Play your game. And so far, that's what he's doing. I don't know where they're going to finish when it comes to the AFC North. I don't know how they're going to finish. Maybe they'll be second. They could be third. You never quite know. But I think they're good enough to be a playoff team. I think they have the talent. And I think this team is finally moving in the forward direction. Baker's rookie year, it looked like the team was moving forward. The next year, they just kind of moved backwards. They took a big step back. This year, it looks like they're taking a step forward. And that 2018 draft really could go down in history as one of the better drafts in NFL history, specifically when it comes to the running back position. Because Lamar Jackson's an MVP. Josh Allen looks like he and the Bills could look to dominate the AFC East. I know I'm going off of only 3 games, but given what we've seen so far, it looks like with the way he's projecting, the Bills could be the next team in the AFC East to dominate it, or at least be another perennial playoff team. The Browns, same thing. It looks like they could be another perennial playoff team in the AFC North. Big Ben's eventually going to retire within this year or the next year. Lamar Jackson, of course, he is still there, but I think the Browns kind of have next. At least along with the Ravens, they'll be contending for first and second place there. And then when it comes to the Jets, it's just kind of, can they finally surround Sam Darnold, or does Sam Darnold go somewhere else? And then we're still kind of waiting to see what happens with Josh Rosen. But 3 of the 5 quarterbacks being hits and being Pro Bowlers and being faces of the franchises, that is fantastic. The game now more than ever is quarterback friendly. And these guys are making the most of it. And you see the growth in these guys, how Josh Allen has improved, how Baker Mayfield, even given the chaos, is improving, how Lamar Jackson is improving. This league is going to be in a great place for a long time heading forward. I love football. Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us out. Also, if you can, please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you, and have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.